going to do some city vendor registration today. We're all really excited about it. So I have some folks with me here. Slides. Okay. Okay, great. So you all know the STIR program, Startup in Residence. You're all part of it. We're all working together. It's very exciting. We just wanted to go over some upcoming events real quick, which include a Skillshare next week on open data and GIS. And then we have another STIR training coming up on the 18th, pitching to government buyers and stakeholders. We're going to talk to some of you about giving a rough run of your pitch at that training so that you can get some feedback on that. So look out for more information on that. And then we have a fireside chat on investment opportunities coming up on the 25th. You all should have these calendar invites. You're welcome to join any and all of those if you would like. And so we have Rob Henning, who is a Mayor's Executive Fellow, and Maria Zenaida Kamuna Madayag from the Contracting Monitoring Division today to help us answer any questions about the process. As you know, this is specific to the city of San Francisco. Some of you are working with the city of San Francisco, some of you are working with the partner cities, but we're hoping that those of you working with the partner cities can get a glimpse into how this process might vary from city to city. And if you are looking to register to do business with San Francisco, you can certainly do that by filling out some of these forms. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Rob.
Sure.
If you want to just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your work with STIR and what folks can expect today.
Absolutely. So as Judy mentioned, my name is Rob Henning. I'm one of the Mayor's Executive Fellows. So I started my fellowship in October of last year. I am embedded within the Office of Contract Administration, which is the city's centralized procurement function. And one of the really cool things that I've been able to do this year is work with the Office of Civic Innovation to help create a contracting pathway for startups that are working through the Startup in Residence program. So when the initial program started in 2014, there was no contracting mechanism in place. So these terrific startups went through a 4-month process with the city, created these amazing technology tools, and then the city didn't have a mechanism in place to license that technology or purchase that technology. So you're part of the second cohort now, and in planning for this year's program, a lot of thought and attention went into creating a contracting pathway so that at the end of the 4-month residence period, if the city really likes the amazing technology that you've created, it's in a position to actually license that technology or purchase it from you through a mechanism that is a lot streamlined than actually forcing the city to put out a formal RFP and having you bid in on it again. You've already gone through an RFP process to get into this particular program. So the reason why we want to take you through the registration process is we're hoping that the departments you've partnered up with will want to license or purchase the technology you're creating. And in order for them to do that, you'll obviously have to go through a negotiation process with them to determine the consideration that will be paid for that technology. But in order for the city to actually pay you, we do need to get you registered as a vendor so that payment can be processed at some point in the future. I think the only other thing I'll mention is registering as a vendor for San Francisco is probably a little bit more complicated than registering as a vendor for other cities. The main reason is because we have legislation on our books called the Equal Benefits Ordinance that will actually require you to complete a declaration in relation to whether or not you discriminate against your employees. So we're lucky to have Maria here today that will provide you with a bit more background around that particular ordinance and the form that you'll have to complete. There are not a lot of cities or states in the country that actually have legislation like that. So San Francisco is sort of unique. The legislation exists because it reflects the city's progressive values, and it is something that can confuse a lot of vendors when they're registering with the city. So we're very grateful to have Maria here today to provide you with some guidance as you work through that particular process.
Maria?
Yes. So my name is Maria Zenaida Kamua Madayag. And I am with, as they mentioned, the Contract Monitoring Division, specifically what is called the 12B unit, and we handle the equal benefits ordinance and the equal benefits process. So should I just go ahead and jump into it or? So I'm not sure if you've seen our form before. It's called the 12B and 12C Declaration of Non-Discrimination in Contracts and Benefits. If you have not received a copy of it yet, there is a 5-page packet that looks like this in the back. We recently actually changed and updated our procedure. Before it was a 2-page declaration. So if you have received that from any of the potential departments that you are seeking to work with, you will need the 3-page. Make sure you have the 3-page form, because if we receive the 2-page form, we will ask you to resubmit an updated form that is dated 2015. So just to give a little bit of background, Chapter 12B requires anyone that provides any goods or services to offer employee benefits to employees with spouses and employees with domestic partners. Those need to be equated, as well as to the spouses and domestic partners of their employees and any respective dependents. So under our ordinance, domestic partners are defined basically as same-sex and opposite-sex partners who have registered with any state or local government registry. So with that being said, we are specifically concerned with legally registered partners. So we can get into the question of non-registered versus registered in a little bit, but as far as our ordinance, we are concerned specifically with those partners that are registered with any government entity. So moving on. In regards to this packet, we will need 3 components. The first is, of course, the completed form. There are 3 pages that need to be completed, and we can go through it fairly quickly. The first page is your company's basic information. The second page consists of declarations of non-discrimination regarding federal, state, and local protected classes and any potential subcontractors you may have. And then the third portion here on the bottom is in regards to the benefits that you offer to your employees. It does not necessarily mean that because all these benefits are listed here that you need to offer them to your employees. This is just a capsulated list of what companies in general offer. So, you know, you only declare what you have. Don't feel the need to, you know, offer all of these if you don't. We're just asking what you do. And then the third page is in regards to your policies in general. We ask that you check the statements as applicable to initial the left-hand side of each statement, or we execute the document. So that's the first step. The second step is the verification of legal employee count. And in general, that consists of tax forms. So what we're looking for is your total number of employees within the United States. So W-2 summary sheets, any W-3s, DE-9s if you're solely located in California, anything of the sort. But of course, you as a company would know best as to what you have on hand that would specifically pertain to your company, and that would show us that information. Okay. And then the third, of course, is the employee memo. That is a document that you compose yourself. It may or may not already be something that you have on hand. For example, if you have an internet website that lists your policies or your domestic partner or eligibility criteria. In general, what we require is a similar memo, and this is page 4 of that packet that we were talking about, basically addressed to all employees, clarifying 1, what domestic partner definition is, and 2, the benefits that are offered by your company. So moving on, these are just a few tips and tricks as far as what we regularly get FAQs on. A lot of people think that because they are compliant as far as offering domestic partner coverage under the state of California's laws, that they comply with definition. The state of California is actually more restrictive. They actually require that domestic partners be same sex and opposite sex under the age of 62. So when you hit the age of 62, you can only be same sex partners. Opposite sex partners do not qualify under the state of California, whereas under San Francisco, so long as you are registered as a legally recognized couple or domestic partnership rather, we recognize that. And we recognize any jurisdiction, state, local, in the United States, okay? If you're seeking to join a joint venture, each leg of the joint venture needs to be compliant as well as the joint venture entity itself. And usually, as you may know, joint ventures are 0 employee companies. So we need to make sure that all of the employees are affected by the joint venture are offering equal benefits, okay? Compliance, this is a question we get often. Compliance is not required at bid time, but the process should be underway because once the contract is executed, under the ordinance, you do need to be compliant. Okay. And once again, it applies to your locations in the United States. So Rob, you asked me earlier about companies that are, for example, their flagship is in Canada. If they do not have any local locations in the United States, we only look at the Canadian locations, but we ask you specifically on page 1 of that form, how many employees do you have in the United States? And you'd of course write 0 if you don't have any employees in the United States, but that does not exempt you from completing the form. You would still need a form in order to get you established as a vendor.
And so United States includes territories such as Puerto Rico as well? Or does Puerto Rico get treated similar to the way Canada would be treated?
No, it would, from what we have, it would be the same as being treated as a state.
Okay.
So that's actually the basics of the equal benefits compliance. Just another thing along the lines of that with the benefits and the definition of domestic partner, a lot of misconceptions are that definition, the basic definition, is all there is to it. We also require that all aspects of how you offer benefits be equal. So for example, if there are waiting periods, any proofs of requirements that you have for domestic partners, such as, for example, being financially interdependent, being housed together for 6 months, you need to either remove that requirement or extend the same requirements to spouses. The other way that we recognize that is, once again, we recognize registered domestic partners under a government entity. So you can have a separate definition for registered and non-registered domestic partners. So if you're trying to prove that there are employees with domestic partners, but they're not legally registered, you can still maintain, being together for 6 months, showing you proof of financial interdependence. So going back to what I said before, we are interested in those that are legally registered under the ordinance.
So a couple of questions for you. We were dealing with startups that are, young fledgling companies. I can imagine a scenario where a startup doesn't provide any benefits to their employees. In that situation, is that okay? And presumably they still need to submit the form, but they will just indicate that they don't provide any benefits.
Exactly.
And therefore they're not discriminating in how they provide benefits.
Yes, that's correct. So once again, going back to what I said, we do not require you to offer benefits, but we do look at your benefits package if it is existent. We want to make sure that those benefits that you provide, for example, the greatest example, especially for startups, are leave policies. And that affects, spouses, domestic partners, children, because the employee would essentially take leave if those members of their family would fall ill or pass, etc. So we want to make sure that, for example, if you're granting leaves to employees for spouses, that you do the same for their domestic partners.
Another question I have is, I think you, within the document, you reserve the right to actually inspect companies' records.
Yes, we do.
Under what circumstances would you actually reach out to a vendor and say, we want to check your records on your premises, or have you submit documents to us to make sure that you're actually compliant with your ordinance? When would that be triggered?
So we actually do perform random audits, and that's actually disclosed on page 3 of the declaration. And it says it right here, compliance audits and required documentation. So on the forefront, we only require the 3 documents that I mentioned, which is the Form 101, this declaration, the verification of employee count, and the employee memo. At the time that you, by any chance, are audited, randomly, you would need to provide us with this comprehensive documentation, and that is page 5 of that specific packet. This is actually what we used to require on the forefront, but as I stated, last year we did update our procedure. So at the time of audit, you would be required, based on what you offer to your employees, this is what we'd ask for. For example, for insurance policies, we'd require a copy of the basic plan document or a confirmation letter from your provider. We need employee handbooks, specifically detailing your policies. So documentation of that sort.
I have a tactical question for today. Is the goal that during this time we'll submit everything and get approved, or is this, is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah, you receive the forms ahead of time, and we have some folks in the room who can help answer some questions. So ideally, yeah, you're able to submit today.
Because I did it all, but on my computer, like signing it and stuff, and then I didn't realize that it would have like paper form, so I wasn't sure if I'd be able to submit it with that.
I mean, I recommend, since we have Marie here, ask her any questions that you have. You can ask me questions as well, and I'll do my best to answer them. I'd encourage you to submit the forms electronically via email,
Okay.
just so you have a record that you submitted them to the city, and then that'll give the respondents on the other side an email trail, so if they have any questions or concerns with the paperwork that you submitted, they can get back to you, and they'll work with you to get you through the process.
Okay.
Obviously it'd be terrific at the end of the residency period. If it looks like you've created a terrific tool and the city wants to license it, if you can already show that you've made your way through the registration process, that makes it a lot easier, and then you can just focus on working with your city department to agree on what the compensation is going to be for the tool that you created.
So Felicia, did you have any questions on your form?
I think the only question was it asks for vendor number, but then it says you can't get a vendor number until you register. So I was a little confused about the ordering of, should I get the vendor number up front, or?
So I think the vendor number you get by submitting the vendor profile packet.
Okay.
So do you absolutely need to have a vendor number before you apply to CMD?
No, we can review your documentation, but of course, if you don't have a vendor number, there is no vendor profile created. So our analysis, will basically not be able. Basically, if you don't have a number, even if your documentation is compliant, if, for example, you're seeking payment, you won't receive that.
Okay.
So the vendor number is obtained by calling vendor file support, which is a separate entity from us, or rather a separate division within the city.
Got it. And so I do that after I get this, after I get registered, then I call and I'm like, hey, I got registered, I need a vendor number. Or can I do that before I submit this stuff?
So the vendor profile, I would submit the vendor profile application, and I think that email that through to vendor profile support. I think they'll give you a vendor profile number relatively quickly.
Okay.
And what you want to do is send your documentation through to the contract monitoring division. And then I think you also need to submit a tax form to the treasurer or tax collector.
Okay.
It is,
I'm a little
unfortunately,
confused,
it's
actually.
confusing
Can you
because
repeat that?
there's 3 separate departments that you need to deal with to get through the registration process.
And this
Okay.
is this chart.
Yeah, I think work through that chart. I'm just looking at the ordering now, and I may want to switch it around a little bit and email it out again. But yeah, I mean, for all intents and purposes, try and get your vendor profile number first, and I believe that's what happens when you email your form through the vendor profile support, and then you want to deal with the tax department and CMD afterwards.
Okay, can you say the second and third, what we sent each of those again?
So you're going to submit Form P25 Business Tax Declaration Form to the Treasurer and Tax Collector. You're going to complete the Declaration of Non-Discrimination in Contracts and Benefits, and that's going to be emailed through to the Contract Monitoring Division.
Which
And
is
then
what
there's-
we just talked about, right?
Right, and then there's the Vendor Profile Application, which gets emailed through to the Vendor Profile Support. So the question of ordering there, I think it probably makes sense to do Vendor Profile Support first, and then do the other 2 afterwards.
Got it.
Any other questions on what Maria just went over from the group? How many of you have actually gone through and filled out the forms, or at least familiarized yourself with them? Alicia? Okay, Emily, okay. So for Rob, would you maybe want to walk us through your flow chart a little bit and perhaps the documents?
Sure, so I handed out this flow chart. Hopefully you've all got copies in front of you. I'm just looking at it now and thinking maybe the ordering isn't precisely correct, but at the end of the day, if you're going to register as a vendor, you're going to need to have some sort of identification number with the IRS. So that could be your social security number if you're a sole proprietor. It could be an individual tax identification number or an employer identification number. So I think in a lot of cases for our startups, you should be able to provide at least one of those numbers. If you are, for instance, we know we have a startup that's based in Canada, it's going to be a different issue for them because they won't have registered with the IRS. So we've got a separate box there that they can work through. They'll have to contact the IRS directly with a separate form and actually get an identification number that they can then communicate through to the city. You may have to register as a business with the city before you actually register as a vendor. That's going to depend in large part on whether or not you are physically domiciled inside the county border, whether you actually conduct business within the county border. So that's really going to depend on where you are physically located, whether you actually conduct operations within the city. So that registering as a business with the city is distinct from registering as a vendor. And then the other forms that you have to complete are obviously the P25 Business Tax Declaration form, the Declaration of Non-Discrimination Contracts and Benefits, and then the vendor profile application. So I would definitely try and get your vendor profile number first. So I think that's what you get from vendor file support, and then obviously work with CMD to get through their process and email your form through to the tax department to get their clearance as well. At the end of the day, what we want to have is you set up in the system with a vendor profile number, and that vendor profile will indicate that you've gone through the 3 steps and you've received clearance from each of the 3 departments that you have to deal with to get registered as a vendor.
Okay, so for those of you who have at least familiarized yourselves with the documents, if there are any questions that you have, we can also just spend some time sort of filling them out. But we wanted to provide an opportunity for you to ask questions specifically of some of the folks who help manage this process, including our friend Greg back here at the Office of Contract Administration.
Yeah, so we have Greg with us. Greg is head of IT procurement within the Office of Contract Administration. If you have any questions around how the city actually typically goes around purchasing information technology, software, and hardware, he's a terrific person to talk to. He can tell you a little bit about how the city's tech marketplace works and how contracts are awarded within a tech marketplace. We can also talk about how the city purchases IT solutions outside of the tech marketplace. marketplace. So the reality is the city spends millions of dollars every year on hardware and software. The vast majority of those procurements happen through the tech marketplace, which is a distinct sort of distinct sort of procurement setup as opposed to Star Open Residence. So if you're interested in how that arrangement works, he's a terrific person to actually talk to, just to give you a sense of how the city goes about its business of buying software and hardware. If you're interested in obviously doing more business with the city in the future and you want to know how you could actually possibly get into that pool of select vendors that do a lot of business with the city, it's definitely someone you want to take the opportunity to speak to.
And since we only have Greg for a limited amount of time, would you want to come up and speak to those pieces that Rob brought up? Thank you. Yeah, so we have a live stream here for our folks who are remote.
So Greg, thanks for joining us. Can you give our audience members here and online a bit of a sense of how the technology marketplace works and a rough sense of how much money the city actually spends through the technology marketplace on an annual basis?
Sure. First of all, I'd say good afternoon, everybody. And as Bob said, my name is Greg Postelnick. I lead the IT unit for Office of Contract Administration. Been with the city about 6 months, so relatively new. Still learning all the secret handshakes myself and nuances that go on. But as Rob mentioned, the tech marketplace is one of the biggest drivers we have for providing IT products and solutions to city departments. If I may take a step back a minute, within the city, we obviously have under services multiple types of professional services that the city contracts for from an IT perspective, as well as for products, maintenance, etc. And I don't want to confuse you. Departments do have a certain amount of autonomy, especially pertains to professional services that will be outside of the tech marketplace. So I just don't want to confuse you. But normally those are very larger types of contracts, well over $2.5 million. For the most part, I think it's as simple as Rob was mentioning, to keep it in the context of the tech marketplace as a way to start. So under the tech marketplace, what this basically is where the city has gone out and we have pre-qualified a number of vendors. I believe the last count is like 24 or 26 different contractors have been pre-qualified, and they've been pre-qualified in tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 being the largest tier or the largest dollar or capacity type of tier. And what this means is by being pre-qualified is that they went through a solicitation process, they've met all the terms and conditions of the city, CMB requirements, etc. They're pre-qualified. So basically they're ready to rock and roll when we have a need. And how it works is when a department has a need, let's say for 20 laptops or whatever it may be, some minor, they will submit a requisition. We will send it out electronically to these people who are pre-qualified, and they will be the only ones allowed to bid on it. So that's pretty simple that. In services though, it gets a little more interesting, especially professional services. And that again, what can happen is these firms, some that come to mind are called like OnPoint, there's, Cornerstone, there's just sorry, drawing a blank, but there's a TIG, we have a number of them, and we can provide you the names of these people, and I think it would be helpful to know who they are. Because what will happen is, and here's an example, we are working on a major project in the city to bring up the Oracle financial system called FSP, and departments have a number of integration issues because we have to integrate with the system. So the controller's office has been helping to facilitate trying to bring the two parties together, the Oracle system with the legacy systems that reside with the departments. And to help facilitate that, we need professional services. So we've been utilizing the tech marketplace as a way to acquire that. So obviously, maybe not obviously, but a lot of the contractors or people within that tech marketplace they're not subject matter experts. So what they do is they subcontract, and that's where your interest would be involved, would be where a specific need has arisen that they do not have the bailiwick or the capacity within the firm. They then reach out to other firms to do subcontracting or partnering with, and then we get proposals back that way. And that's why I was using the FSMP as an example. I don't believe any of the people that are pre-qualified have per se integration experience on the different legacy systems, but they have the ability that's gone out to get to partner with other people who do have that, so that's how we've bridged the gap. The main thing I want to stress is the tech marketplace has been a conduit or a vehicle to the city because these people are pre-qualified, and we can immediately go into contract, issue purchase orders. It very well streamlines the business. And roughly the spend that goes through tech marketplace is around 70 million, I want to say a year, give or take 10 million in that ball in that lane. And I would say the split is probably 60 to 70% services and the other 30% hardware. So one of the things that I will do is to make sure you get a list of who these people are in the tech marketplace, so you can introduce yourself and let them know what your areas of expertise and background, how you best can work with the city. So again, that's one way of doing business with the city. The other way I kind of alluded to it's been a long day, I apologize, but where the city will directly contract, and that does occur, where again, as a special, unique system, or for whatever reason, it's proprietary, no one else can do this. It doesn't go through State Tech Marketplace, and there we will contract directly. But again, as was pointed out earlier, you're still going to have to be pre-qualified. You're going to have to be a valid vendor to get paid, et cetera, et cetera. You just can't do business outside of it. So that's another option. But if I was in your shoes right now, the first option I would look to, or path to go, is down to the tech marketplace, because again, through that is you're probably going to have the greatest amount of reach for the minimum amount of effort. And I might have been mentioned, there's 65 departments within the city. I believe there's actually 65 IT departments in the city, or close to it. At least 45, I know. So there's a lot it's very decentralized in that regard. And what we have is we try to have a centralized process. But again, it's up to Public Works or the Port Department or 311 or Department of Technology. They are actually the decision makers when it comes to professional consulting services, which is, I think, the realm we're talking about today, especially for startups.
Questions? Rob, do you have anything to add?
I guess my question would be, how do people get to be those tech marketplace people? Like, is it by working with departments or, if you're the prime, so to speak, what's the process for that?
Excellent. Yeah, very good. Glad you should have mentioned that. So as I mentioned, the city has a process to become pre-qualified. We just went through that and added some new contractors to the, for lack of a better word, the stable, the farm, ranch, whatever, the players. That will come up again probably in 2 or 3 years. So in the interim, it's going to be through either one by partnering or working as a sub to these members within the tech marketplace, or the other will be where you'll have a unique need that you would be directly contracted for from a department where they're submitting a justification of why they do not want to go through the tech marketplace and they need to only go this route. You just call it sole source. So I'm hoping I answered your question in that regard. I think the other would probably be to provide like a list of who our CIOs are, another way of introducing yourselves.
Well, and the other part was more general, not what we would do this year, but like in 3 years, if a company wanted to become this tech market, is a bid gonna go out, like become a pre-qualified?
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we will like in 2 to 3 years. It is renewed.
Okay.
It's refreshed.
And then
So you will have
everyone
an
is
opportunity.
welcome to raise a hand and get pre-qualified or
We
whatever.
welcome as many people who want to participate to become pre-qualified. The more the better. But I was meaning in the immediate interim step instead of waiting. But yes, you will clearly have that ability, as anyone would, to be involved in that process. Again, there's not just from technical. There's been other areas I've mentioned that need to be addressed in that pre-qualification process to become ultimately qualified.
Can you give us a sense of what sort of qualification criteria you would actually look at for people to get into that? What sort of technical capabilities or delivery capabilities would they have to meet to be able to cross the threshold into that sort of elite pool of players?
What it would really come down to is, obviously what the requirements are that the city is looking for in the different tiers and how you would best meet that. Part of what we would do is and again, I have not done this here in the city. I've done it in a prior life, so I assume we use the same methodology, but as my mother once time told me, never assume. What we do is we collaborate with the departments, because this is a vehicle for all these 65 city departments to be able to utilize. So we're trying to capture within it what are special needs, unique services, types of vendors, contractors that you're going to need, what type of requirements, what type of criteria to evaluate that. And that is what would be incorporated into the document. We don't do this blindly. It's not like somebody like me that decides this is what we're going to do. It's being based on what the city's needs would be at that time. So there would be engagement and involvement with, especially some of the key departments, the larger ones. We call them PUC, airport, department of technology. As you can imagine, the Pareto principle holds. 20% of departments are going to equal 80% of the spend, and I think I've mentioned the top 4 or 5. That the part of public health, that's the big 5, basically. That would be the process that we would have, is when we would bring in what are future needs. I know we've talked a lot about agile type of abilities, especially as it pertains to web design, things like that. That's been a new thing that's come up. So it would be whatever the needs are are at that point, as well as trying to look into the future the best you can in technology, realizing 6 months is an eternity in technology, I guess. It changes that rapidly, at least 12 months. So we try to base it on those factors, but we don't do this in a vacuum. It's not looking backwards. It would be always at least currently to look forward to meet future needs, because the point of this is to facilitate, to make things flow more efficiently, quickly, to get good talent into the city to solve problems, get them to do it, get them paid, move on to the next project. Yes, sir.
What type of capabilities do you look for when designating a sole source contract? So whether it's a product or a firm, when you guys are going through the sole source working process, is what features, functions, capabilities you're looking for in order to delegate or designate this is a sole source contract versus working with
Yeah, and follow up on that, because I had a similar question. Maybe another way to look at it, what kind of justifications do you have to make to enact a sole source contract as a department?
Well, first of all, I hope you're not squirmish, but we do ask for a blood test. Yeah. No, joking. Very good questions. And the city is a little bit unique than other public entities, public sectors, where there is this concept called single source of preference. Strictly within the city, and I've had conversations with the attorney, so it's pretty sure it's how it's been looked at. There has to be, one is it's proprietary, that it's unique, there is no other solution. Overall value, those are some of the key thresholds that have to be met or exceeded. Versus something I've seen in other lives is sometimes it could be just a preference, and we're familiar, or we heard about this company or whoever, and they're investing some sliced bread. That is a little more of a push here in the city. Here it's more of, you have a unique, there is no other competition per se. Yeah, so in that regard, there has to be, and an overall value to the city has to be delineated. What is the overall value? Not because you're telepathic and you can read my mind and it's easier for me and I got 10,000 other things to do. I don't know what that means value-wise, versus you've already been working on it indirectly through it as a sub. There's a synergy to move forward now in full implementation, let's say. I'm making this up. That would be the logic and the rationale. So again, anytime you're exempting a competitive solicitation or using the tech marketplace, et cetera, where you're limiting competition, I should say, or limiting, there has to be a step of justification. And the ultimate one, the one I'd like you to take away, is overall value. What is the value to the city? If someone can address and do that, that's a big win. I mean, we can squeeze a lot of things behind that, but the challenge we get into is that that's not being able to be delineated. It just gets into preferences. Well, I like this, I'm comfortable. Well, what does that mean? How do you quantify that? I mean, how do you, and that's where it's more challenging.
So it's really being able to, the department will have to make the case to OCA that
Yes.
there is no comparable substitute out there that can do what your product or solution does. If there are substitutes out there, then it's a lot harder to justify that you get a sole source waiver. You've got to be able to say that the solution we provide is so unique and so distinctive that there are no competitors out there that provide something that will solve the pain point that we're dealing with in a similar fashion.
Said much more distinct.
I have another question. So we've heard about the tech marketplace, we've heard about sole source. Where do the RFPs fit into this? Like we heard from the folks working on Dahlia, the new affordable housing portal that was an RFP put out, and a vendor here in the city won. So how does that, it seems like it's a third way to do business with the city. Or does that happen through the tech marketplace? I'm just wondering what that landscape looks like.
First of all, RFPs, requests for proposals, are utilized primarily. It's utilized for services, especially professional services that are qualitative based. Meaning, normally we're looking for someone. We have a need, we have a problem. We're looking for someone to provide us a solution. So that's how I want to make sure we define it. Because a lot of times people go off with bids and other areas, and it's a whole different discussion. So that's the first criteria. Is it has to be, it would be at that. Generally, through the tech marketplace, as I mentioned, I may have mentioned or did not, the departments are the ones who are autonomous, who have that authority to do those RFPs. Again, those RFPs are only being issued to the players who are in the tech marketplace. That's the key. But then how you can get in is, with one of the players may not have that specific expertise that your firm has, that they're going to reach out or they know about you. They're going to make a call, and then you guys can partner, work as a sub, etc. That's how you get in. There are unique, and again, I'm not going to talk about it, where much larger dollar contracts, departments actually can go outside of tech market and issue an RFP just outside of it. What comes to mind, I think like the medical examiner was doing something recently for basically to manage a morgue, to manage the coroner's office. Or like, I can't think, there's a medical name called medical examiner, right? So, that was sent out directly to firms in this country who do business and who have IS systems that met our needs.
And that wasn't the sole source, but that was an RFP.
That was an RFP.
Needs couldn't be met through the tech marketplace. So
right,
yeah.
it was efficient because the individuals in this it's such a specialized area.
So as a small company, you have these vendors, and how do you recognize the opportunity? Are the RFPs published but only allowed to be responded to by companies that are pre-qualified in the tech marketplace? Is that how it works? And so if you identify a particular opportunity that comes up that you think you're like the best person to provide that services, how do you negotiate that? Do you go and pitch that to one of the people that are already in the tech marketplace and say, hey, look, there's this opportunity here. I think I'm good at it. I mean, is that the way that a small company should approach this?
Yes, my suggestion would be what you would do is introduce yourself to these firms once you know who they are, that they're aware of who your business, what your bandwidth is, your specialties that you can perform, because you never know when those needs may come up. So familiar with it, because that's how it's going to normally work. When like any general contractor, they get a unique need, you're going to immediately, not going to use a Rolodex anymore, obviously, hopefully they're not. I mean, it gets on we're using a Rolodex, but they're going to pick like who do we know that has, or we're aware of that we've met or has expertise in this area. So we'd like to bid on this project because it's complex. So there's parts we could do, but there's a specialty part. Another way is, so that would be the easiest way. Because otherwise, the actual RFPs that are issued to the tech marketplace are not published, to my knowledge. They are, unless it's open, it strictly goes to the players that are pre-qualified. So it's not like you can look on our website and see that there's this project that was issued to the tech marketplace. You would not have that visibility. However, the ones that do not go through there, As an example, I mentioned one. I think a couple other specialized types of projects that will be coming up are advertised on the city website. So that is also another fashion to go. Is one, introducing yourself, getting to know the members of the tech marketplace. And I also think getting to know who the CIOs are in the city, because they're decision makers too. They're a big driver. I mean, it's very important. Because they're ultimately the ones that are making the decision on the technology you're going to need. They're the old adage, they're the decision makers. When you get down between those two parts, and then the rest of it is getting through the maze of the city to become a partner or business. But we'll be starting there where they have. OSTA does not have. We just manage the awarding process, the issuing purchase orders. But the city is very decentralized. It's run by the CIOs, so they themselves know by their given department what future projects are for this budget year versus the second or third year out. And then COIT, much about COIT. We can talk much to COIT because I think COIT would be another. COIT is like the overall for the city master group that looks at the future vision for all of IT. But I don't know how that gets disseminated.
I know my understanding of COIT is it's more of a policy platform. So it's comprised of select individuals around the city, and they will come together periodically to decide the overall direction that they want to take the city in from a technology standpoint, try and promote standardization, try and make sure that the city is making the best use of the dollars that it has available to it when it's investing in IT technology. And they will be the key decision makers if they're going to invest in a massive upgrade. For instance, the city is implementing Oracle PeopleSoft, replacing a really old financial system. So that decision-making process of actually investing millions and millions of dollars in Oracle PeopleSoft is something we would be taking at a point level.
That's the Committee on Information
Committee on
Technology.
Information Technology.
We have a question from one of our remote attendees here. Does a subscription license for cloud services count as professional services?
I don't know. I'll have to get back to you. I've seen it. The reason I'm saying that because I'm thinking about prior experience, but I've seen it done in the city. I've seen it done both ways.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the official. That's why I want to make sure I get that answer because I've seen it done both ways.
And for context, a lot of the products being developed here for a particular challenge as part of the STIR partnership, the idea is that this technology can be used elsewhere for other cities and that face similar problems. One of the revenue models of the software is a subscription model, seat license or subscription license. And in the government technology space, some companies have been using that approach as a way to get below procurement thresholds. So wondering if you have any thoughts on that or have seen any of that increase in that kind of approach with technology companies here. I know you're only 6 months old.
It's not new.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't quite catch.
So software as a subscription,
yes.
Software as a service, excuse me, or SaaS, oftentimes happens through a seat license, which is $25 a month. And so I know a number of companies that have used this model to enact contracts that come in below procurement thresholds.
Yes.
Maybe that can be put on a credit card or like petty cash type thing. Whereas in the aggregate, if you look at 10 seat licenses, $25 a month over the course of a year, might trigger a procurement threshold that will require going through a tech marketplace. But wondering, have you thought if and I think that's part of where this question is coming from.
Okay,
Is there
sure.
a way
The
to
question is,
avoid-
if you're like that, like what's the route? And
So basically, if I've captured your question correctly,
And Salesforce is like the perfect kind of quintessential example.
if I captured the question correctly, all that work still has to go through the tech marketplace. So there is not a P card way or some other indirect way. It has to be. It would have to go through the tech marketplace, even if it's $500 or $1,000. And one of the things also that's looked at is total cost of ownership. What does this really mean? I mean, is this we're signing up for 6 months, or is this gonna be, in reality, is gonna look for a 5-year extension, it's gonna grow exponentially, it's gonna have to be amended in change orders. So all of a sudden we capture that, no, even though we're starting off at, $1,200, in 3 years, it will mushroom up to $25,000. So those kind of checks and balances occur. But the city, we real sure how we are different in many other public entities. We do not have a tech marketplace. So here it has to be funneled. We don't have these the ability. Departments would have the ability to go outside of it to buy small purchases.
So if the folks here were to meet a department that liked their solution and the department wanted to work with them, they would have to go through a tech marketplace vendor as the prime, and they would sub out through that. Even if it's a seat license model, they'd have to be paid. They would have to, the tech marketplace vendor would be the primary contractor to the city, and these folks would be a sub to that.
Right, because under the tech marketplace, they get first dibs on it. The only time that we go outside of it is if we do that and we get no responses. Then we have the autonomy to go go out to bid or contact.
I think QK, that's for procurement outside of the startup and readiness model. So what you're going through is, if you decide, if your department and you decide to enter into a contract relationship, you will be doing that directly between yourselves. Don't worry about the tech marketplace interfering there. We're just giving you some context around tech marketplace in case you want to do additional work with the city outside of the scope of this particular program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Greg has to head out. Thank you again for your time. And we'll.
Direct some questions behind, and I do respond and I'll get back to you. Very nice to meet you.
Thank
I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Question here. Pass down
Sure,
my table.
I will try.
So first, we had a comment that the documentation says that departments have flexibility up to 10K except for tech contracts. Okay, and then are the contracts public? If they are, is there a link to the repository?
So are the contracts public in terms of
Which contract?
which contracts?
Let's see here.
And what's this procurement threshold in the city? 10K?
So
Or it's complicated?
it's complicated. So typically what happens is for most commodities and services, if you are purchasing below $10,000, and when I say you, I'm talking about the department, if it's the fire department or the police department, if they're purchasing something, say a stack of paper, and the amount involved is less than 10,000, they can engage in that purchasing process without involving the Office of Contract Administration, which is the central procurement authority. So the idea there is if you actually delegate procurements below 10,000 directly to departments and they take care of it themselves, it's more efficient than actually trying to funnel everything through OCA because you're going to end up with a huge bottleneck there. That $10,000 threshold doesn't apply to motor vehicles and it doesn't apply to IT technology. So when you're dealing with those two types of commodities and services, typically all of those procurements at some point will get reviewed by the Office of Contract Administration. Having said that, as Greg alluded to, you will have CIOs in each of these departments, in most of these departments. They will be the ones that are making the decisions in a lot of cases. So OCA is, I don't want to say they're a rubber stamp, but OCA is just involved in the process, not actually making the formal decisions, but they are part of the chain that the paperwork has to flow through before the procurement is actually finalized.
So we got a little bit of clarification. So this is from our startup that's based in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And he says there is a repository with all contracts of vendors in the city. So he was asking broadly.
So all of the contracts that have already been entered into with vendors. So, I mean, there is an online bid database that has all of the documents that are put out into the public marketplace for a lot of commodities and services. The contracts that get signed with vendors, they're not publicly available as in put on a website. Having said that, we have something called the Sunshine Ordinance, which actually allows you to reach out to the city and say, I understand that you have, for instance, a contract with this particular vendor providing these goods and services, I would like to see that contract. The city is obliged under that sunshine legislation to provide you with a copy of that contract. Because the city is spending public money on these goods and services, you as a taxpayer should have access to that document. So if you're aware that the city is doing business with certain organizations and you're interested in seeing what terms and conditions of those contracts are, you can reach out to the city through the Sunshine Ordinance portal and actually put in an official request to see that document.
There's another question online. Do procurement threshold rules apply for
For STIR vendors? Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So STIR is a very unique special program that we've set up. So it'll be interesting to see. This is the first year that we have a contracting pathway for startups that are taking part in this program. But as far as I know, there are no thresholds involved. So at the end of the day, once you're registered as a vendor, at the end of the residency period, it's going to be a question of your partner department and you deciding, do they want to license the technology? And if so, what sort of price are you going to charge them for that, right? And that will be a negotiation that you will have to engage in with that department. As part of that process, the city will probably provide you with a contract template, and that will serve as a starting point for discussions that will take place. That will probably be just a boilerplate template that the city has, which has been prepared by the city attorney. You can obviously take that template, confer with your in-house legal counsel or your external legal counsel, or if you don't have legal counsel, you can reach out to organizations, so a couple of universities that have student lawyers who are interested in this sort of thing, and actually engage with them for advice. That you will be engaged in that negotiation process, and hopefully at the end of that process, you'll have an agreement that is signed between the city department that you've been working with and your organization that will outline the terms and conditions of your arrangement for kids.
The response to that is, woo! So I want to be respectful of Maria's time and Rob, of course. Any other general questions? And then we can have some time if there are specific pieces of the forms that folks have questions on. Again, you can also take some of this information, go back as you're filling things out, and we'll connect you with folks who can.
If you're going through the forms and you have questions, by all means, email them through to Judy, and we can compile some responses on our end and share them with you collectively as maybe the best way to make that process more efficiently, as efficient as possible. The other alternative is complete your form, send it into the respective department. If they're not happy with it, they're going to get back to you, and they will provide you with guidance to complete the form correctly. I've been going through a process with an apparel manufacturer, and they've submitted forms to CMD twice now, and they keep getting it wrong. So every time they submit it and it's incorrect, CMD responds to them and says, these are the specific areas in the form that you have not completed accurately, please resubmit. So that is another way of actually going through the process and learning about how the city actually works with vendors to get them registered.
And along the lines of what Rob said, on the third page of the form is our division's contact information. So if you call our main number and ask for anyone from the 12B unit, either myself or my colleagues will be able to help you one-on-one.
Our folks online say thank you for the informative session, and it was great. So, anything else from anyone before we wrap up? Okay, thank you so much for your time.